think it's important for us to come together and to know that our stories fusion to the thought of harmony and creativity and beauty and myth and fable out in the world. And we'll have just this little bit of time to come into some positive thinking and know that that too will have force out in the world. So I think it's really important that we're here together tonight in story. And I welcome you, and please enjoy. Liz.
Thank you, Sally. I just want to point out we have 45 people. I think that's a record.
Wow.
So we all wanted story tonight. I'd like to turn this over for a moment to Ed Lewis, representing the Storytelling Association of California, which is an umbrella and which has graciously provided the Zoom account and the recording and putting on YouTube of our swap and many other swaps, but also he wants you all to know about another new virtual program of SAC. So let me, yeah, you are unmuted, Ed.
I'm unmuted.
Let me cancel and we can try to spotlight you. Okay, go for it.
On there.
Okay, hello, thank you. So I'm here to tell you about a new event that the Storytelling Association of California is putting on, and some of you may have already seen it. We had our first one. It was called the Genre Storytelling Series. And we're putting this on the third Wednesday of every month from 7 to 8:30. And we have 6 storytellers that get nominated by swap groups. And last month, your group nominated, I think it was Bertha Riley. Is that correct, Liz?
Yeah.
So she was one of our tellers. And it was very successful. And the idea with genre storytelling is that every month we will have a different genre of storytelling. So people who tell different kinds of stories have the opportunity to tell stories on that genre. So we started with personal stories, and then next month so it's the third Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we will have folk tales. And story swap groups can nominate one person to be the storyteller, and they can even be a repeat of someone previously. The qualification is that you are a participant of your local storytelling group, like you guys here, and that you are a member of the Storytelling Association of California. And if you're not a member, there's many benefits, and you can go online to the Storytelling Association of California and become an individual member for $30 per year. So I encourage you to do that. And you can also, just be a listener. You can come on, you go to the website for the Storytelling Association and you just register. And it's a free event, although we take donations, and we split those donations entirely among the 6 storytellers. So last time we got $300, and we are expecting a little bit more because some people couldn't attend due to the fires, and they can listen to it online, and they can donate at that time. So we invite you all to come as listeners, and if you're interested, see Liz or Sally and become a storyteller representing your group. And I'll be sending out a list of all the different genres. So we do folk tales, then we're doing spooky, scary stories. Then we'll be doing spiritual, inspirational, tall tales, historical, so forth. Every month we'll have a different genre. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. All right, now I have to, Shags told me I have to do something right now before we get any further. And let's see if it works. I'm gonna stop my video so that on this recording and for all of you, we see the SAC logo, I hope. Let's see if it works. And now I have to spotlight it though. Oh, I don't know how I do that.
I see it.
Good, good. All right, well, we did it. Okay.
There it is.
Okay. All right. I hope Ida just got in. All right. So it's my duty and pleasure to now introduce to you our storytellers for this evening. First, I'll introduce our featured teller, Marilyn. And then I've also put in the chat, in case anybody wants to kind of follow along, we have, I think, yeah, we have a really nice big roster of storytellers today. So, but our first teller will be our featured teller, Marilyn Marco. And Marilyn has been studying storytelling with Jeannie Haynes, who many of you know. And Jeannie, I think you got on. So, it was at Jeannie's most recent student showcase that Sally heard Marilyn tell this story and said to herself and to me, we have to have her come on and tell this. This is just fantastic. Everybody's gonna love it. And the story is called A Whale's Tale. Marilyn is gonna write a children's book about this story, which we can look forward to. But right now, she's gonna take us on a journey about an experience that she had sailing around the world with her husband for 6 years on a sailboat that he built. So let me get the spotlight on you, and then we are all excited to hear. Would you speak, actually, Marilyn? Just say hi. Oh, here you are.
Sure.
I see you.
Hi, I'm Marilyn.
All right. And now I'm going to spotlight her. Okay, Marilyn, please let's welcome and enjoy Marilyn's story.
It is 1989. My husband Jim and I are anchored on our 37-foot sailboat off the city of La Paz, Baja, Mexico. This is the early part of our cruising years, and it's the early part of our marriage. We had only been married a couple of years. I am 39 years old. We had sailed out under the Golden Gate, turned left, and headed down the coast. So on this day, we're getting a leisurely start to the day. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning, when all of a sudden the VHF radio goes off with an urgent call from a Mexican fisherman. Por favor, all cruisers, please come help us rescue a stranded whale. We jump into action. We run up to the deck of our boat and to the stern. We jump into our rubber dinghy, which is our local transport. We untie it from the stern of the boat. We get the outboard motor roaring to life, and we speed out there to the location. As we approach, we see this enormous whale stuck in a few inches of water. We don't know how this has happened, but we know we have limited time to save this magnificent creature. As we approach, it is thrashing around, trying to break free. But as we get closer, and by this time, there are also cruisers streaming in from all the boats. They've all heard the emergency call on their VHF radios, and everyone is responding to this and streaming in. Eventually, we have about 25 people. As we approach the whale, it becomes quiet. When whales know they are about to be rescued, it has been noted many times that they become docile. So we jump out of our dinghy, we secure our dinghy with the little anchor, we jump out into ankle deep water. A man from the Department of Fisheries has already come out and identified and measured this whale. This is a female gray whale, 44 feet long, about 40 tons. That's bigger than our 37-foot ocean-going sailboat. So as I approach this whale, the first thing I want to do is to put my hands on her body. I put my hands on her midway. So there's about 20 feet of whale body to my left and about 20 feet of whale body to my right. And I look up, there's about 10 feet of whale above my head. I place my hands on her body. It's kind of wet, kind of warm, feels kind of rubbery, but I can feel the life force pulsing beneath my fingers. I step back in order to walk around the whale, and I come up to her eye, which is above her fin, and it's closed. And I walk around the snout to the other side, and her eye on the other side is closed. So the 25 or so of us decide that what we need to do is start digging trenches next to her body, because when whales are out of the water, they suffocate from their weight. So all of a sudden, the sand is flying. We are using hands, pails, whatever we can get our hands on, and we're scooping out sand, scooping out sand. One cruiser even brings a high-pressure hose, somehow manages to hook that up to his dinghy, and he's hosing large quantities of sand out of there. So we're digging and digging and digging. And then all 25 of us run around to the other side of the whale. We get on the side of her and we push, and we push, and we push. Have you ever tried to move 40 tons of whale? So we run back around to the other side and we repeat the process. Dig that trench, get that sand out of there. We've got to get her deeper in water. Keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. And then again, all 25 of us run around to the other side and we push and push and push. So we repeat this process maybe 10 times. And all of a sudden, this whale starts working with us. She starts rocking her body into the trench and continues to do that each time we dig a new trench. Keep digging, get the sand out of here. We gotta get her deeper into water. Hey, let's pick off these barnacles off of her body. So we go around doing grooming all over her body, picking off the barnacles. We keep her wet all day, that's important. And someone also brings a tarp that we lay over the top of her body to keep the sun off of her skin. So we keep up this process, digging and digging, and this goes on for hours. We notice all day long, off in the nearest deep water, that there were other gray whales that were spy hopping, which is they lunge their giant bodies straight up out of the water in order to get a look-see what's going on over there. And we also noticed that there was a pod of dolphins swimming around all day. So we continue working on this whale, picking off barnacles, digging trenches, keeping her wet, talking about whales' tails. But we know basically that we've got to wait until the tide comes back in, and that's not going to be until the afternoon. Eventually, after a number of hours working on her, a lot of the cruisers start peeling off and going back to their boats. But there are about 10 of us that remain. We are not going to give up on this whale. So we keep attending to her, digging, and gradually, the water begins to come back in. We keep working on her. And then when she is nearly submerged in water, all of a sudden she gets her flukes, that's the tail, going, and look out, get out of the way, she's on the move. It's enormous. And all of a sudden, she swims off and we scream with joy. We are so happy. Jim, let's get in the dinghy and go follow her. Yeah, let's do that. So Jim and I jump in the dinghy and we roar out to where the whale is gone. We notice that pod of dolphins that we had seen all day long, had surrounded the whale and piloted her out to the nearest deep water because she would have been disoriented. So we dinghy out there, and then we cut the motor, and we're just floating there quietly, patiently. We see the whale surface for air a couple of times, and we're just waiting patiently, quietly. All of a sudden, our whale is right beside our dinghy. And then she lifts a fin. We see the white underside. And then she's gone.
Everybody can give this kind of silent or, oh,
Wonderful.
what an adventure.
Sorry.
Yay, that was
Thank you.
fabulous.
That was marvelous.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well told. Excellent.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marilyn, for getting us off to that great, great start. I'm
Thank
going to
you.
invite everybody to mute yourself again. And because we have such a full roster of tellers tonight, and Zoom can get long, I'm going to invite everybody that when each teller is finished, we're not going to unmute. We're just going to, I mean, Sally and I maybe can clap for all of us, but you can show your appreciation both with your hands like this and also by using the chat. Some of you are already using the chat. Marilyn's got all kinds of wonderful appreciations. If you don't like the chat, if you feel the chat is distracting, which some people do, then just close chat. So that's, that way everybody can have what works for them. So with the next, all the tellers who are coming now, we're going to have 1, 2, 3 more tellers. We'll take a very short bio break and then the rest of our tellers. And tellers, most of you have told me, I believe, yes, how long your story is. What I'm going to do so everybody understands, whoops, sorry. I'll just spotlight myself so everybody, I'm going to use my phone as a timer, and I'm going to set my timer till 2 minutes before your, let's say you told me you have a 6-minute story. I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes. At 4 minutes, you're going to hear a little musical sound to tell you that you have 2 minutes left. And then if it actually comes to the very end, I'll watch for 2 more minutes, then I'll kindly and gently as I can invite you to finish your story. So that's how it'll work. And I've put the order of the storytellers on the side. And our first storyteller is Bobby Kincaid, who's formerly the co-host of Contra Costa Tale Spinner. So we're so thrilled that she's here to tell us a Japanese folk tale called Rabbit in the Moon. So let's make sure that
Thank you, Liz.
you can hear her. Okay.
I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. This is one of the selections of the tales I've included in what I call Damsels Overcome. And when I was a child, I used to read every folk tale I could. And I gained power from these damsels in distress. And this is one I saw at the Asian Art Gallery. And I was tell you, I was a little horrified that the male god was the lead and the rabbit was a girl, because in my mythology, rabbit is a female and the moon is feminine, and it means health and the seasons and the tides. So here is my story, Rabbit in the Moon. It was a very dark, dismal, stormy night. The wind was crashing and pounding, and Rabbit was inside cooking, and her friends, Monkey and Fox, were there with her. Monkey was pacing back and forth very, very nervously, and Monkey had slid up the trellises up to the top of the hut and was murmuring to itself. And Rabbit, she was stirring the stew. She loved to serve them. She did their laundry. She worked in the garden, grew the vegetables. She cleaned and swept the hut. And Monkey helped her with the fruit trees, and Fox, he'd catch some bugs, and sometimes he'd bring in a fish or two. But they were there grumbling about the storm when all of a sudden was bang, bang, bang on the door. And Fox just stopped his movement, and you could hear the monkey upstairs just whimpering. And she said, somebody open that door. Somebody out there needs help. Fox said, I'm not going. No, I'm not going to open that door. You know, it could be this horrible monster. He could be coming in here to eat us, I'm not going to open that door. She said, yes, you are. Open that door. Well, he went to open the door, and whap, the door blew open. It pushed him to the floor. The rain came in, and inside stumbled this beggar, this smelly, rotten smell, and his hair was dirty and drenched, and his clothes were wet and soggy and dirty, and he had cloth wrapped around his feet, and he says, I'm cold. I need a place to stay. Well, they welcomed him. She welcomed him in and said, here, sit at this bench. Well, Monkey was upstairs hiding, and Fox, he hid in a corner, and she said, okay, both of you come down here. And they slowly came down. She said, Monkey, you go and you find him some fruit. Well, Monkey went out, and he looked all over, and he couldn't find anything, and he came back, and he said, here, I found some fresh soybeans. So she set them down in front of the bum, and she opened them up, and he was chewing on the soybeans. He said, this isn't enough, and I'm still cold. And she looked at Fox. She said, Fox, go out and find him some fish. Fox said, oh, sure, I'll go fishing. Well, he wasn't gone very long when he came in, and he said, no, it's not good. It's not good for fishing out there, but I bought these bugs. And the beggar said, I can't eat bugs. And Rabbit, she said, yes, you can. We'll put them in the fire, and we'll cook them up, and they're very delicious and crunchy. Well, everything was going along pretty well, and Fox comes over and whispers in her ear. He said, you know, he wants to eat us. And she says, oh, no. He says, yeah, look at him. He's still really hungry. And he was over there, and he said, oh, I am starved. I'm really, really hungry. So Rabbit looked at Monkey. She said, you go out, pick some cabbage, a daikon, bring him some more soy beans, bring in an eggplant, and that ginger root hanging out there with some herbs. Fox, you get the big pot. Okay, so she could hear him out there was chatting. And she says, hurry up, it's wet in here. So they went and got the vegetables, put them in the pot. She said, okay, Fox, you bring in the pot. Monkey, pick up some more wood out there, would you please? So the pot came in, and then Monkey came in. He slammed his wood down by the fireplace and crawled back up in his hiding spot. And Fox, he just put the pot on. She said, no, put some water. And he said, no. And he went and he hid in his little corner. So she took the vegetables, she washed them all up, and she dumped the water outside, and then she had her pot, and the one stirring on the fire, she stirred it up. And so she cut up all the vegetables very carefully. She wasn't saying anything. And this beggar was sitting there watching her, just watching her. And pretty soon Fox came over again. He said, no, you know what? He is going to eat us. She said, no, he won't. No, he won't. And so she gently put more water in the big pot, took her other pot off, dumped that all together, put all the vegetables in them and stirred them up. Oh, it was smelling so good. And she stirred around, and the beggar was starting to smile. He was getting warmer. And she said, okay, Fox, put out the bowls. Monkey, come down, get out the rice cake, put 3 bowls on the table. The beggar was over there. He's fine. You two sit here. And then before anybody knew it, whap, Rabbit jumped into the pot. Her friends were so horrified, they screamed and they held on to each other. Well, at that moment, the beggar turned into the sky god. He grabbed Rabbit by her ears, opened that door, and he flung her up to the moon. And he turned around, he said to his friends, I have never seen an animal, a rabbit, serve as well as your friend did. She saved you from your fears, and she was willing to feed me. She will always be recognized in the moon as the server for all people. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful story. And there really is a rabbit in the moon. If you know how to tilt your head, once you see the rabbit, it's hard to see the man in the moon. All right. Our next storyteller is going to be Suze Champagnier. Suze, I'm going to ask you to unmute. I'm slow on the canceling the, so I'm going to try to spotlight Suze. There you are. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Good. So Suze, please tell us about Josh and the coconut.
All right. Well, lately I've been home a lot. So I've been watching the human interest stories on daytime TV. And I understand the plight of the single moms who are trying to make it on part-time work and very little childcare, really limited, because I was also in that position 25 years ago when I was in night law school and Josh was 6 or 7. So I was looking for a summertime story and I asked Josh if he could think of anything from that time. He said, Mom, remember when you bought me the coconut? You told me that story a couple of years ago, but your memory of how it ended and mine are different. I think it's time I told you what really happened. We were living in the Central Valley of California, and you guys all know that back in the 90s, it was much cheaper economically to live there. Houses, food, everything was much cheaper than the Bay Area or LA. But still, I couldn't afford to send him to summer day camp. We were living in a house with a backyard. It had an oak tree that he could climb, and it had a red swing and bench. And then the patio, it was a covered back patio with a ceiling fan built in, so he could stay cool while he played out there, and he played with his Legos and his Transformers, and he built things with this youth-sized toolkit. And his father got him wood and nails and all those safe things. And so he could build things. His best friend was his scruffy little dog. Now, some of you have heard me tell about Josh before, and Josh was clever. He was a clever boy. When he was 3, he decided he wanted to climb on the roof of the playhouse at his preschool. So he looked around the yard and he stacked up things one on top of the other on the side of the playhouse. And when the teacher saw him, she called out, Josh, what are you doing? He said, problem solving. So he was a bit bored this summer. I tried to include him in as much as I could. We would go out to the roadside stands to buy strawberries and peaches and melons. And sometimes we would go to the West Side farmers markets where there was purple onions and red and green bell peppers and zucchinis. Well, one time there was a basket of coconuts. Mom, can I have a coconut? No, Josh, I don't think they even grow here. So Next day or two, we went and got milk at the grocery store, and Josh found some cut coconuts, cut up. And so he said, "Mom, can I please have some coconuts?" He didn't whine. He knew not to whine, but he asked politely. I said, "No, I'm sorry, honey. It costs too much money for those cut up coconuts." Well, a week later, we went back to the store for the basics, milk and eggs and bread, and he took off. I thought he was going to the cereal counter or the cereal aisle, because we had this thing for when he bought cereal, he would go over and he would bring me back Lucky Charms or Cocoa Puffs. And I would look at the ingredients and say, "Josh, the sugar is the first ingredient. You can't have this because it's all sugar." And then he would take it back and he would come back with the Captain Crunch, where sugar was the second ingredient. And then he would put that in the cart. But this time he came back with a whole coconut. "Mom, could I please have a coconut? I really want to taste fresh coconut." "Josh, I don't know how to open a coconut." Dad knows how. Dad could open it for us." "Josh, your father does not live with us, honey. If you want this coconut, I'll buy it for you, but you have to open it." "Okay, Mom, I can do it. I can open it. I'll use my tools." Well, this was actually a master plan, a genius plan, because it would keep him occupied. He went and took that coconut out back, and he got out his tools, and he was stabbing it with the screwdrivers, and he had a hammer, and he had a saw. He was busy on the patio, and I went into my front office, and I got work done. I studied for my law class. I got my reports done so I would have some billable hours for work. And then along about midday, he was hungry, and he told me that it was really thing that he
So
did.
Suze, tell us. Whoops. Tell us what happened in the end. We need to know.
Well, that's the problem. It really needs the whole story.
Well,
So
this is just the amount of time you told me.
I said 7 minutes. Okay, it was 7 minutes already?
Well, I thought you said 6. So go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, so he needed more tools. So he asked for the tools from his grandfather's tool chest, because he was like my father. He was so clever. So I gave him the tools, the chisel and the mallet, and he went back to work. Around 4, I went out to find out how he was doing. No Josh. I went to look for him in his bedroom. No Josh. The dog was on the bed. She followed me out front to the porch, and there was something that came flying down. It was, of course, the coconut, splat on the sidewalk in front of me. I bent down and I picked up all the pieces, pushed the dog away, and when I looked up, there was Josh with his hands on his waist and a big grin. "Problem solved, Mom, problem solved." Well, I thought that he threw it from the little tree in the front. But as he said in the beginning, that I didn't know the rest. I didn't know the whole story. "Mom, here's what happened. I climbed up the wrought iron trellis on the porch up into the overhang, and then from the overhang up onto the roof. and I threw it down with all my might from the roof. That's the story.
Yay.
Thank you. Those kids. That's pretty amazing. You know, the kids now with COVID and the pandemic, maybe some of them are going to learn some of those lessons that, you know, in being that,
So if anybody tells
being
it,
that innovative and, you know, figuring things out for themselves. So thank you.
yeah,
Kids nowadays need to hear that story. All
Yeah, but-
right.
probably tell them that the boy, not about the boy going up on the roof.
Well, that's an issue with a lot of our stories about what kids did and what we got away with in the past and so forth versus now, but that's another story. All right, our next storyteller, our next storyteller is Karen Werner, and she's going to tell us a folk tale. So Karen, please unmute yourself. I'm going to spotlight you. I see you. You're still muted, I think. Let me see if I,
Okay, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, Liz, I was a little confused. Did you give 2 warnings?
I did, I tried to, I tried to give
I
a
only heard
2-minute
the
warning.
one.
Huh?
I only heard the one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I held it up, but
No problem.
okay. So I'm going to give you a warning at 2. You said, I have down that your story is 5 minutes. So I was going to set it for 3 minutes and then again. Okay.
Hopefully,
All right.
yes. So lovely to be with you this evening. My story is about a wise woman who lived by herself in a little cottage at the end of her village. And although she lived alone, she heard knocking at her door several times a day, for everyone knew that she was a wise woman and she could give them to the answers to many problems. When will it rain for my crops? When should I plant the potatoes? Oh, my child is a fever. Do you have any herbs that could help? And she always seemed to have the right answer. In fact, she was known as a woman who knew everything. Well, the people had admired this, and they came from all over the land, not just her village. But the children in the school were a little skeptical that somebody could know everything. So they decided to put her to the test. They began to ask her all kinds of questions. Which planet is the smallest? How far away is the sun? How many villages are in our country? And she always gave the right answer. Finally, they kind of accepted that there was no point in keeping on questioning her because she was going to come up with the right answer. That is, everyone except for John. And John was a real skeptic. Oh, he thought, I'm going to show her up. She's a fake, and I know it. So he told his friends to be at her house the following day after school, and he would show them just what a fake she really was. Well, all that next day, he ran around looking for a bird. He finally caught one in his net, and he got the bird out of the net and put her behind his back so that no one could see her. And he went to the old woman's house and knocked on the door and said, hey, I'm here. And I want you to answer a question so that we can see whether you really know the answer. Well, I've never said that I know everything, but I do believe that there is a bird behind your back. Now, what he didn't know was that she could hear the fluttering of wings. Well, this just made him more furious. Oh, I can't believe it. How did you know that I had a bird behind my back? Well, he came up with a really devious scheme. He decided he would ask her whether the bird was dead or alive. If she said that the bird was alive, he would simply crush it in his hands. But if she said that the bird was dead, he would let it go and fly away into the sky. So he presented her with this problem. Tell me if you know everything, and I know people think you do. Is the bird alive or dead? Well, she thought for a while, and then she said, the answer, young man, is in your hands. The answer is in your hands. The boy immediately felt regret, and he realized the life that he had behind him. And he drew the bird in front of him so that they all could see it. And he said, I'm sorry, little bird. Go, go, fly away. And he did.
Oh.
Wonderful story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. And again, I apologize for my glitches here. Like I was muted, so you didn't hear, but you were perfect on, you had your time perfect actually. But so please, my apologies to the tellers.
None needed.
Anyway, lovely. Thank you so much, Karen. So we will take a 3-minute bio break now. And I'm going to time the bio break. And so, if you need longer than that, you can come back without disturbing, but I'm going to set the timer now, and 3 minutes. Oh, now that's, shush, be quiet. Okay. All right. Get up, stretch, go take care of any needs. And Melinda, Ginny, I always feel like I don't know how to pronounce your last name, is our next storyteller. So please join us back in 3 minutes.
I was, but not as good as I should be.
Hey, Limbo, how are you? Hey, Limbo, you don't look very good. Shit.
The recording going. And let me say that again. Melinda is going to tell us about a fine fall day.
It was a beautiful day, a Saturday in the middle of October. And I was in my early 40s. I was working as a social worker for the visiting nurses while I was finishing up my dissertation in psychology. I was about 2/3 of the way through my doctorate, and I decided I was going to take some time off to go on a long hike with a woman I had just met but was totally infatuated with. We decided we were going to go to Point Reyes for the day. I stopped by the Italian deli and I picked up a couple of sandwiches for us. A friend of mine where I lived had told me all about it, all about this deli. I was living at the time in a fairly kind of quirky apartment complex that had 6 units in it. I called it the Barbary Lane of the East. And my friend had told me about this deli. So I stopped there on my way to San Francisco to pick up my new girlfriend, Janet. I got to her house and she decided, since I had driven all the way from Oakland to her house, she would drive to Point Reyes. She had a really old car. It had roll-up windows and an AM radio that had an antenna that had long ago snapped off. So she had fashioned an antenna out of a metal hanger that she formed into a rectangle. It barely got the big stations, but we didn't care. We didn't really need a radio on our way out to Point Reyes. We got there, we hiked through the Bear Valley Trail all the way down to the beach. And we sat there and ate our Italian sandwiches. I started to notice that there was a big fog bank or some kind of clouds that were coming in over the San Francisco skyline. And it made me wonder if it was going to start to rain. The weather in October was a little bit unpredictable. And so Janet and I decided after we finished up our lunch that we would head back to the car, which we did. We got in her car, kind of adjusted that little rectangular metal hanger antenna so we could tune in to hear what the weather forecast was. There's a giant fire in Montclair. Don't go near Montclair. The whole place is burning down. You can't get in. The fire department is making everybody evacuate. Stay away from Montclair. I lived in Montclair. What were they talking about? It had been a beautiful day when I had left at 10 a.m. to go pick up Janet. I hadn't noticed anything wrong. I wondered if that was all the clouds I was seeing over the skyline in the city. Janet, you have to drive me home. You have to drive me home. Let's not go back into the city. Just drive me directly home. No, she said, I can't. My car won't make it. I can't get all the way over there. I'll have to drive you back to the city and you can pick your car up there. Well, we hadn't even gotten to Sausalito yet. I said, stop. Let's get off the freeway. I'll find a payphone. It was 1991. We didn't even have cell phones at that time. We found a payphone at the visitor center in Sausalito. I first called my friend that lived in the apartment complex with me. She didn't answer the phone. I called our landlady who also lived on the property. She didn't answer her phone. Oh my God, I thought something is really wrong here. I didn't know what else to do. So I called the operator. I've been hiking all day out in Point Reyes, but I live in Montclair. What's going on? Oh, honey, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I just work here. But let me patch you through to somebody. They'll help you. Bill Martin, Channel 2 Newsroom. Oh my God, she patched me into the weatherman for the Channel 2 Newsroom. And I said, I've been hiking all day out in Point Reyes, but I live in Montclair. What's going on? Oh, it's a conflagration. The whole place is burning down. You can't try to go home. They won't let you in. The police and the fire department have barricaded the whole area off. You don't even try to go there. I said, but, and he said, the fire is now at the corner of Thornhill and Mountain. That was my corner. The fire was at my corner. I had 3 cats and a dissertation. I had to get home. Janet took about a half an hour to get us to her apartment. I didn't even say goodbye. I just jumped in my car and I headed over the Bay Bridge. It was about 6 o'clock at night and it was already dark because it was late October. I tried to get into Montclair. It was true. All of the main arteries going into Montclair were blocked off. There were giant barricades and police or fire department staff. You couldn't get past them. But I was working for the visiting nurses and I knew all the back roads. So I started to sneak through these back roads in Piedmont. And I found a way to get into Montclair where the staff had already left the barricades. The barricades were still there. And I thought for 1 second, maybe I shouldn't go past them. And then I thought, forget it. And I drove right through the wooden barricades. The whole city was abandoned. All the shops were closed. The streetlights weren't even on. Cars were abandoned in the middle of the street. They were parked backwards on the street. And I just kept thinking, I just have to go 1 more block, just 1 more block, just 1 more block, and I'll be closer and closer and closer to my apartment. And I made it to the corner of Thornhill and Mountain, and it hadn't burned yet. So I turned the corner onto Thornhill and I drove about a half a block to my driveway and I pulled in. Everybody had already been evacuated. Nobody was there. And there weren't any lights on either. And I got out of my car and I called for my cats and they came right away and I put them in the car. And then I ran upstairs. I got their carriers and I grabbed my computer. And it wasn't a laptop. but it had my dissertation on it, and I hadn't backed it up for a couple of months, so I knew I had to take it with me. I carried all of that downstairs, and then I ran back up, and I got a suitcase. I threw in some clothes. I threw in some toiletries. I threw in a few snacks. And then I called my best friends in the city, and I said, I have to come over. I can't stay here. We're being evacuated. And they said, come on over. So I got back in my car, and I turned down Thornhill towards the freeway. I looked in the rearview mirror. The whole hillside was ablaze in orange and red and crimson fire. And I just thought, as I looked through my rearview mirror, I don't even know if I'll have a place to come home to. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Brings you back to that time. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Melinda. Yes. An important reminder, a very important story for fire season.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I hope all of our thoughts and prayers are with everybody that's going through the fires now. It's just incredible.
Melinda, we lived up Thornhill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Jerry lived in Hiller Highland. I think Jerry's still here. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. There might be some conversations that people want to, connections. Put something in the chat if anybody wants to connect, offline of this about that. So thank you, Melinda. Our next storyteller is Claire Castell, and her story is called Summer at the County Fair. So,
mine's going about 7, so don't alarm me until around 5 or so.
Yeah. Okay. Just a minute. Let me spotlight you and give me a moment here. I'm trying to do too many things at the same time, and I'm, okay. You think your story is 7 minutes. All right.
Yeah,
I'm setting my timer for 5 minutes, and Claire, take us to the county fair.
I did want to say that Melinda's story is very timely because my son and his family were evacuated from Scotts Valley. So I've been sort of living this. Their house is fine and the evacuation orders are off. And my story is about a summer, not a fall like Melinda's. It was 1963. My twin sister and I were 13 years old, and we and our father had just moved to Pleasanton. It was a sleepy little cowboy town at the time. And our mother had died a few years before, so it was just the 3 of us. We didn't know anybody in the town, and it was lonely, and summer was just dragging on. Now, my sister and I tend to be different people. She looked like she was 10. We're fraternal twins, Carol. And I looked like I was 16. So we tended to have different friends. But that summer, the county fair came to town. The Alameda County Fair came to Pleasanton. And it was 3 blocks from our house. Well, somehow we convinced our father to buy a 2-week pass. The fair lasted 2 weeks, so that meant we could go every day, as many times as we wanted to. And he said, well, okay, girls, but stay together, stay on the main thoroughfares, and don't talk to the carnies. They're dangerous. Okay, Daddy. Well, we go down to the fair, and we walk through the entrance, which is down on Rose Avenue in those days. And just inside the entrance was an Indian teepee. And the announcer says, step right up and see the genuine Indian princess in her teepee with her tommyhawks and her scalps. And I'm going, ooh, that sounds really good. I want to see that. She maybe this is the same princess that was on Roy Rogers. So my sister doesn't care. She wants a hot dog. So I'll meet you over by the pony ride. And we separate. Well, the Indian princess, the act starts, and a man, an older man, is sitting and he's playing a drum. And out comes the princess out of the teepee. And she has long, dark braids. She has a buckskin dress on, and she starts dancing to the drum. And I'm mesmerized because, well, one, she's Indian, and two, she's a princess. Now, I know that this would be culturally incorrect today, but remember, this was 1963. So we wouldn't say it this way. So I'm still watching after the show is over, and the princess comes over to me. And she says, "Hi, my name's Cherokee. You live here?" So, yeah. And we start talking. And she's 16. She's looking for friends. And she finally says, "Do you want to go for a snow cone?" "Yeah, sure, do I?" And Cherokee and I became good friends. So almost every day of that 2 weeks of the fair, I saw Cherokee. Now, you know, probably at the fair, there are all kinds of sights and sounds. There's the calliope organs and the screams from the people on the tilt-a-whirl, and clowns walking around with balloons, and big show buildings, and the smell of the 4-H building, and rows and rows and rows of games and attractions, and the pervasive smell of popcorn. And there is also horse races. All over Pleasanton, you can hear the horse races being announced. And so one day I want to go over to see the horses, and I'm wandering around and I meet a jockey. Now this jockey is really shorter than me, so I couldn't tell that he was 20 years old. And he takes me to meet his friends and introduce me to his horse, his big brown horse, whose name is the Family Jewels. And I decide, because I'm 13, that he was my boyfriend for those 2 weeks. And he was a perfect gentleman. So one day, Cherokee and I are hanging out. She says, "You want to go meet real gypsies?" "Yeah, do I?" So she introduced me to this family called their Mr. and Mrs. Boswell and their son. And they didn't look like gypsies. They just had jeans and sweatshirts on. They didn't look like my storybooks, but they were really nice. And they had one of those baseball games where you throw the baseball and knock over the bottle and you win an animal. And Bono was their son. He's around 14. He has a big crush on Cherokee. And he says, "I'll show you how to throw the ball just right so you can get them knocked down and you can win the extra big teddy bear." And Mrs. Boswell, she said, "You kids run along and have some fun. Here's some food tickets. Have a good time." They were wonderful. That was the best summer of my childhood. Soon the fair ended and I had to say goodbye to my Kearney friends. I never saw them again, but I have always remembered the friends I made that summer at the county fair in 1963.
Oh, great. Very good. Very good. Yay.
Great job. Great job.
Wow. I could smell the popcorn. Couldn't we smell the popcorn?
I hope so.
Boy. Yeah.
And smell the 4-H building.
Yeah. That's always my thing at the fair, is the animal. City girl that I am. Thank you so much for bringing us there, Claire. All right. Our next storyteller is, I'm going to cancel the spotlight. Ooh. Sorry. All right. So our next storyteller is Bertha Riley. And Bertha, let's see, I'm going to ask you to unmute. I am going to spotlight you. There you are. And once again, thank you, Bertha, for being our rep at the genre SAC genre swap. It was wonderful. I hope a number of us got to be there, but if you didn't, this is just a plug before I let you tell your story, that you can go on the YouTube channel of the Storytelling Association of California and see many of our past swaps, and also the genre storytelling events will all be there. So, okay, Bertha, what have you got for us today? Please.
Okay, well, there were two old veterans. They were pretty beat up. So they were stuck in an old hospital room in a veterans hospital. Well, one of them had a bed beside the door, and he could see the odd person coming up and down the corridor. The other one had a window beside his bed, and he was able to prop himself up in the bed, and he saw beautiful things from his window. He kept them beautifully entertained by telling them what he saw out the window. You know, there were school children going to school in the school days, and then in the summer, he would see the children playing games, hopscotch, skipping rope. And sometimes there would be parades down the street, and he'd describe all the beautiful colors of the costumes on the horses. And sometimes at Christmas, there would be lights along the street and people singing. And the man in the other bed was kind of jealous, really, you know, because he really wanted that window bed where he could see all those wonderful things. But he tried not to be too jealous, but he couldn't help thinking that when the other old man died, he would get the window bed and enjoy himself watching all the beautiful scenes down below. Well, a couple of years went by, and all kinds of scenes went past that window that the old man described. But one day he didn't waken up, and his friend by the door couldn't help. He was kind of sad, but he still couldn't help being kind of very happy that he was going to get the bed by the window. And he made sure that when they took his friend's body out, that he did get moved to the window side. And he couldn't wait to kind of prop himself up on the bed and look out the window, and except there was nothing there. Just a concrete roof of an old building. And he realized that his friend had just been telling him stories all the time to keep them amused. Oh, he felt bad for his jealousy. And then he realized maybe if he closed his eyes, he could see all those wonderful things again. And that's what he did. And he thanked his friend for having shown him how to see beauty, even when it really wasn't there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bertha.
That was wonderful.
I've read that story. Probably a lot of us have read that story, but you brought it to us like I've never experienced it before. Goosebumps.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, isn't that, you know, that's what we do. We lift the stories off the page or off the, you know. Yum. All right. Our next storyteller I'm going to ask him to unmute. And is Ed Silberman, and I am going to try and spotlight him. Here we are. Ed, last month you didn't have the internet, you didn't have the stability, so we're really glad that
Zoom and I just weren't getting along last month. So, what can you do?
we can have you back. We can have you this month.
Well, this is an odd story, almost surrealistic. And ordinarily, I wouldn't introduce a story that way. I don't like to guide people to their reaction. I like them to hear the story the way they hear it. But sometimes it's only fair to warn people that they're about to hear an odd story. It's about a shepherd who lived in Galloway, in the southwest corner of Scotland. He lived all alone, and he didn't mind living alone. He liked being alone, and he liked being close to nature. Every morning he would wake up and listen to the birds. He would go out to feed his chickens and milk his cow, and then it was time to go out on the hill and tend those sheep, and nothing gave him more pleasure. Every night after work he would sit by the window just watching the world go by. And one night he saw a fire way down at the bottom of the hill off the edge of his property. So he got 2 big buckets of water and he ran down there, and when he got to where the grove of trees stood, they were still standing. There was no sign of any fire. The ground wasn't charred. The trees had no burn marks. The leaves were still healthy. It was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. So he lightened the pails by watering the trees, and then he walked back to his house. A year later, to the day, he was standing at his window when he saw a big black rain cloud approaching him fast. And he thought that was strange because it was the only black cloud in the sky. All the other clouds were white and they weren't moving. There was no wind to speak of that day. But this cloud was moving fast. And as it got closer to his house, he realized it was really a flock of birds. And they were flying right to his house, and they landed in his garden, and he was so happy to see them, he ran outside and he danced with the birds in his garden, and they just flew around him like it was the most ordinary thing that ever happened. And then the next morning he woke up, and there were no bird prints in the ground. There were no feathers lying anywhere. The bushes they'd been eating berries off of were healthy looking. No sign of any kind of tampering. And he thought, that's really strange. What happened? A whole year passed to the day, and he was standing in his window, and he saw a black man off the edge of his property, just beyond his fence, the lane that ran along his fence. This man came, and he stopped right there in front of his house, and gave him the sweetest smile, like he was seeing an old friend he hadn't seen for years. And the shepherd thought, I never see anybody new around here. I know everyone around here. I've never seen this man. Who is he? And then the stranger just walked on. 1 year passed, and the shepherd decided to invite the widow who lived across the way to spend the evening with him. So if anything strange happened, he would have a witness. And he made a fire, and he made a pot of tea, and they sat up at the window, and they told stories and talked about their friends and shared old times all night long until the fire started to burn down. So he got his peat basket, and he walked out to the peat heath, and he got halfway there. He looked up in the sky, and he fell down on the ground. Well, the widow ran right out to take care of him, to see what had happened. She turned him over, and he was dead. And he had the sweetest, most contented smile on his face she had ever seen. And that's the story.
Okay, yay.
Is that okay?
Okay. Okay, Ed, great.
Thank you.
Great.
I guess things like that happen in Galloway. I don't know. I've never been there.
Oh, we've
That's
been
great.
to a lot of places tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you to all our story swappers. And Sally has the last word. So Sally, just a second. So I'm going to,
Hey, Liz,
yeah.
do we have time to sing one last birthday song to Sally?
Oh, sure. I think we absolutely do.
Okay, if you know this one, sing along at home. Don't unmute because it makes a lot of chaos, but sing along at home.
Shall I spotlight Sally though?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Good idea.
All right.
This is for you. Happy birthday, we love you. Happy birthday, and may all your dreams come true. When you blow out the candles, one light stays aglow. That's the love light in your heart where'er you go.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for listening and coming. How lovely to see you all. Yes. So this is a sort of a COVID story. Today I had to play the Seize the Man game. The game starts when I can't reach something that's too high, or it's too heavy and I can't pick it up, or I can't unscrew a cap or something. Well, that's what happened today. I had a bottle of lemonade. I could not get that cap off. Let me ask you, who designs the machines that put the caps on the bottles? I mean, are there no parameters? I mean, tight is tight. Well, so what am I going to do? Well, first I knocked it with a knife, and then I put it under the hot water, and then I tried brute force, and then I took it out to the living room and banged it against the fireplace. Nothing happened. I couldn't get that damn top off. So I decided it was time to play Seize the Man game. And this is how it works. I go out my front door, bottle in hand. I go to the sidewalk. I live very close to open space. Lots of people walk by my house all the time. And I look up the street and down the street, up, and then here comes a man. I'm wearing a mask, of course, and I gaily walk up the street, pretending, you know, that I'm up and fluffy and all of that. And I'm smiling at him, and I'm stopping 6 feet in front of him, and I'm said to him, "Can you please? I need a strong man. Can you open this bottle for me?" And he looks at me, and his chest grows bigger. And he stands more upright, and he puts out his arm, and his muscle is bulging, and he takes the jar of lemonade and he unscrews it. "Oh, thank you so much." And he hands me back the lemonade jar. That's your COVID good deed for the day. And I see him going down the street, and he's very jaunty about it. You know, he took the jar, he took the cap off the jar, and he's walking down the street, and I'm thinking to myself, when he gets home, he's going to tell his wife of this big deed he did. And she's going to smile and say, "Oh, what a blessing you are. What a COVID blessing this is." And I sat home and drank my lemonade and thought, I'll seize a man anytime. Good night. Thank you all for coming. How lovely to see you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And before we go, I just want to announce that our featured teller for next month is Kirk Waller, who many of you know very well. He's been our featured teller before, and it's been hard for him to come last couple of years, and he says he's coming. So
great. So Word Weavers is Delta Word Weavers is on September 13th, a Sunday afternoon at 2. My theme is animal antics. So you can just come and tell that night, or if you want to email Marian Ferranti at deltaWordweavers@att.net, give me an email to tell me you would like to beyond for animal antics. That's lots of folk tales or your own animals doing crazy things. Tell us about it. See you September 13th.
Marion, can you put that, your email address and maybe the date also in the chat?
That's true. Okay, I'm going to take time to do that.
Great. Any other swap announcements? I mean, if people want to hang around for a few more minutes.
South Bay Storytellers is third Sunday evening, and it's also using the SAC platform for that. Where it's from 7 to a little after 8 o'clock, 8 to 8:30 at the most, on third Sundays of the month. SAC.
Sherman is, and if you want to get notice about it, I'll put her email in the chat.
If there are no other announcements, I'm going to stop the recording, and then if people just want to keep chatting.
All right. But go ahead.
All of the swaps are listed on our website, SAC's website. If you go into story swaps, most of us have our link and everything is right there on the website. That's where you can find us.
All right, guys, so come visit us all.
Yep.